I like covering John Jay in this unit, particularly because, to my mind at least, he's kind of the forgotten founding father. He did so much work. He pioneered the Supreme Court, made it what it still is today, and really, I think just kind of got the short end of the stick on credit. When we think of the founders, we think of Washington, Jefferson, Adams. I've never really heard too much about him. I wrote essays for the Federalist Papers, but that was about all I knew. So I hope to maybe lay some knowledge on you and teach you a few things you didn't know before. So Jay was really the driving force behind legitimizing the reputation of our Supreme Court overseas. I say new because we were a new nation. He crafted the boundaries and responsibilities of the Supreme Court. That's what SCOTUS is, Supreme Court of the United States. And he was a little bit different from most of the other founders in that his parents were French Huguenot refugees and not British subjects. So he goes to school, and then he becomes a part of the political world and a highly successful attorney. Jay was very, very hesitant to engage in the revolutionary cause that was sweeping the then colonies at that time, because he really firmly believed that the colonies' relationship with England could be saved, and disagreed with views on separation. And that guy that you see on the right of your screen is who they wanted to separate from. That was King George III of Britain. So he's sent to London with a delegation to try to negotiate a peace with King George III's government, and his views on separation radically changed. He knew after that there was no way that the colonies were going to be taken seriously unless they fought and won a war against Britain. Just as I said, they needed to declare and win a war. So he comes back and he starts taking the cause of revolution with the utmost seriousness. In 1778, he's given a high honor at the time, probably the highest. At 33 years old, he's appointed the president of the Continental Congress. Think of it roughly, kind of, sort of, like the president of the United States today. It's the highest civilian post during wartime. There are I'm going to try to draw some equivalencies for you. Please don't think that there are direct equivalencies. Most of the time I'm going to say kind of, sort of, because our institutions have evolved a great deal over the centuries. So just take these equivalencies I draw with a grain of salt. So within the year of being appointed as president of the Congress, he's reappointed to a diplomatic posting in Spain to ensure Spanish allegiance to our cause in the revolution, make sure they didn't side with Britain. And he traveled to Paris after that to assist in negotiating a peace treaty with the English. And after that, he missed the ship that was carrying his appointment letter. He found out that he had been appointed Secretary for Foreign Affairs, kind of, sort of, Secretary of State, under the Articles of Confederation, the document which preceded our Constitution. So he serves in this role until the Articles of Confederation obviously start to fail, and then he gets on board with the cause of ratifying our Constitution. He contributes 5 essays to the Federalist Papers and pushed for the Constitution to be ratified. So once upon a time, when I first made this unit up, I knew who all of these men were. I know this is obviously Franklin. I have a hunch that this is Jefferson. Washington, I think, is probably either him, this guy, or this guy. And I have no idea about the other two. If anybody can tell me, I might be inclined to throw a little extra credit their way. So Washington wanted John Jay in government, saw his value, wanted him in a leadership role, a high leadership role. So he appoints him as Chief Justice of the brand new Supreme Court in 1789. And Chief Justice Jay reinforced the separation of powers by refusing to give formal counsel to members of the executive branch. In other countries today, even a prime minister or a minister in charge of some department might write over to a court that would hear the issue if the law was ever challenged, and say, hey, what do you think of this? And the justice or judge or whatever they're called would write back and say, I think you need to change this, that, or the other thing. Well, John Jay believed that was infringing upon the separation of powers and would not do that with President Washington or senators or representatives or whoever was writing him. But after they proverbially clocked out for the day, that he wouldn't be opposed at all to going and grabbing a beer at the tavern with George, President Washington, and talking over anything that he wanted to. So informally, he'd offer any guidance necessary, but not as Mr. Chief Justice Jay. It was off limits there. John Jay was really disappointed with what he could do as Chief Justice. You can't do much of anything even now as a justice of the Supreme Court. These guys and gals aren't ambulance chasers. You have to wait until somebody brings a case to you, which could take a very long time. And members of the Supreme Court, our justice system is way overloaded. Members of the Supreme Court have to pick and choose which cases they hear because there are so many of them and there's so little time that they can't possibly hope to hear every case that's brought their way. Now, I imagine would have been different in 1789, 1790, 91, But again, he had to wait. He couldn't go out looking for work. So he retired as Chief Justice and ran and was elected as governor of New York, a much more powerful position. New York was a very powerful state, even more so back then. So that's what he did. In 1800, Jay left political life entirely to move back to his farm, and he was religious. So he studied, he engaged with the church until his death 29 years later. So he had a nice long retirement. These are the Chief Justices, the first Chief Justices of our country. It's not a promise, but if I'm looking for a point or two, I might ask you to identify the names of one or two or three or however many of these men. John Jay, left to right, top to bottom, John Jay, John Rutledge, Oliver Ellsworth, John Marshall, Roger B. Taney, Salmon Chase, Morrison Waite, and Melville Fuller. So his history on the court: John Jay, first Chief Justice, also the first Justice, because he was President Washington's first appointment, so there was no other justice on the court but John Jay, so he was the first justice and justice number 1. He was Chief Justice from October 19th, 1789 to June 29th, 1795. Now, on a test, I wouldn't ask you to identify October 19th or June 29th. I'd give you years. He was appointed by George Washington. That should be easy for you to remember. Commissioned again September 26th, 1789, and took his seat October 19th, 1789. And he left to become governor of New York State, succeeded by John Rutledge, and is the first justice on the Supreme Court. So Chief Justice number 1 and also Justice number 1. And this is the old Supreme Court building. If any of you have ever been to the Capitol, you can see this. I think you have to take the tour, but I always remark upon the size of the furniture and how much tinier our ancestors were than we are today, because I think it would take about 3 of those wooden chairs put together for me perhaps to have a seat in that chamber. But yeah, it was in the U.S. Capitol building and used 50 years on a full-time basis, and then it was finally decided that the Supreme Court needed their own building, and hey presto, they got it. So we will look at the Marshall Court, and in particular Marbury versus Madison, in Part 3.